As the world holds its breath over where this conflict in the Middle East is now headed, including the difficulty of working out exactly what US President Donald Trump might do next or not do, it's all as predictable as a winter chill. Along comes former Prime Minister of Australia Paul Keating, putting up his hand to attack anyone critical of his mates in China. Now, Keating, Prime Minister, remember, between 1991 and 1996, that's almost 30 years ago, has been a long-time critic of the Australia-US alliance. Keating bristles at any US boots on the ground here in Australia, even if only for training purposes, and he's been a constant critic of the AUKUS submarine deal between the US, the UK and Australia. Now, I'm not sure who Keating thinks would help Australia in any conflict with China, because Keating doesn't believe China actually poses any threat to us at all, anyone, including Australia, including the US or even Taiwan. Now, Paul Keating's latest rantings come from a small, bitter, delusional opinion piece that was written for the Australian newspaper today. Obviously feeling, once again, this is Keating, relevance deprivation syndrome. He upset his legendary status in the ALP. He's really worried now that he's not got the ear of the PM's Defence Minister or the PM himself or the Foreign Minister, all queuing up at his Potts Point mansion for writing instructions he unleashes on his own party once again. Now, in typical dramatic language, that's Keating's style, that was once entertaining but is now sounding more and more delusional. He said comments from Defence Minister Richard Marles were, quote, a dark moment in Australia's history. I mean, what an exaggeration, really? And what were these dark history comments exactly made by Marles? Well, Marles said Australia's geography and continent would be crucial to any US prosecution of a war against China. Now, I'm no fan of Richard Marles, let alone our slippery Foreign Minister Penny Wong, but wasn't Marles just stating the bleeding obvious?
China's conventional military build-up is the most significant military build-up that we have seen, conventional military build-up that we have seen since the end of the Second World War. And it shapes the region in which we live. And it means that Australia's geography today is more relevant to great power contests than it has been at any point since the end of the Second World War.
Dear old Keating then really got wound up, claiming any threat from China is only an allegation, that the Chinese have not threatened Australia militarily, nor indeed has it threatened the United States, and has no intention of doing so. Now, that last comment would suggest Keating has a wonderful crystal ball available to the great man and ignores any of the thousands of experts who disagree and believe China does have expansionary ambitions. Now, has Keating heard of the Belt and Road Initiative? Surely he has. And what does he think China's sinking billions of dollars into third world busted-ass countries in the Pacific is all about? Look, I suppose Paul believes it's just the charitable Chinese. He also seems to think when China critics talk about an aggressive China, it's all about conventional warfare with invading troops and tanks and the like. Keating ignores a covert attack on Australia when the Chinese felt insulted when Prime Minister Scott Morrison dared to call for an investigation into how China handled the Wuhan outbreak that killed hundreds of thousands of people worldwide, infected millions, shut down the global economy. What did China do? It attacked Australian businesses. It shut out wine and crayfish and meat and more. Keating likes, I think, to believe he reflects the wider view of the Australian public. In my view, if anyone were to run a simple poll asking, do you support the Australian military alliance with America, the answer would be a resounding yes. The no side would consist of the Greens, the far left, and dear old Paul Keating.